Hello, folks. This one's kind of a reaction video. It's a reaction to something that Professor G just posted a short while ago. I'm a little puzzled about it, not about his analysis and not about his concern, but also about how the fact people are still confused. From the outset, I've told people that this refugee program is authorized by the Immigration Nationality Act of 1980, and it's under an aspect of the program which is called in-country resettlement. It's rare that the United States accepts refugees from a country when they haven't fled from that country. Normally, a refugee is someone who's crossed the international border, escaped conflict or persecution, something like that. However, in some instances, persecution is so pervasive, so hideous, so insidious, the United States government recognizes people being persecuted with inside a country, and therefore we grant in-country resettlement. A couple examples: Bosnia-Herzegovina in the 1990s. Another one, Cuba. And the most recent one, South Africa. So, in-country refugee resettlement. I don't know what's difficult for people to understand about that. I also don't understand what's difficult for South Africans to understand that this is to help people who are being persecuted in South Africa escape. For months now, I've dealt with endless questions about people saying, but I'm in Spain, but I'm in Ireland, and I want to come to America. Well, I'm sorry. The program isn't for people living in Ireland, isn't for people living in Spain, isn't for people living elsewhere. It's for people who are in South Africa who are being persecuted. And this also extends to the question about H-2A visa holders who are over here on temporary work visas. Well, you have refuge. You're in America. It's temporary. And I agree. Now, Professor G has told people that it doesn't make sense to him how you would be able to prove persecution and you go back to South Africa after your visa is expired. Well, I've told you from the beginning, you don't want to let your visa expire. You don't want to overstay a visa because getting another visa and getting a refugee program is going to be a problem after that. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but it's not going to be easy. Do not overstay your visa ever, ever in any country. Countries look very dimly upon that outcome. So do not do that. That's the first thing. Second thing is that I understand where Professor G is coming from because he's an asylum attorney and he's talking about asylum cases. You surely can't come here and ask for asylum and then go back to the country where you've been persecuted, because then it just kind of undermines the point. But the United States government with an in-country program has put South Africans in a catch-22, as Joseph Heller would call his novel, a no-win situation. You're persecuted. You can't find work because you're being denied employment. That's a form of persecution because of your skin color. Therefore, you apply for a visa, come to America, you work over here in the agricultural sector. Should you be punished because you're here? Now you can't participate in a refugee program? Well, that doesn't pass the common sense test. And that's what Professor G is shaking his head about. And I agree with him. But do not overstay your visa. And as I've offered all along, I would not recommend the asylum path. Virtually no South Africans are granted asylum. It's a very small number. You want to take that risk? From what we can see, the people being granted refugee status is pretty solidly high numbers for those who've put a statement of interest in and who've been interviewed. So my recommendation here is for people to understand that it's an in-country program. Now, the questions come up repeatedly over the past 7 or 8 months, whenever this thing started on February 10th, when it was posted by the embassy. The questions come up, what about people outside the country? I said, well, to me, if you're temporarily outside the country, you haven't changed your abode. If I were an USCIS official, I'm not, but if I were a judge, I'm not, but I have been a judge, I would look at this and say, all right, you are putting in a statement of interest because you're interested. Your abode, your residence, your permanent residence is in South Africa where you're under threat. You just happen to be safe temporarily, either on vacation or a work visa or something like that. You're currently abroad. Therefore, common sense, I would not say you cannot put a statement of interest in. However, as I've told people from the very beginning, you're not going to get interviewed. And I have people whining and complaining. Well, how come they can't interview me in Dublin? Because you're not in South Africa. The embassies don't handle refugee resettlement. That's not their job. Their job is a diplomatic relationship between the United States and promoting American interests in South Africa. That's their job, not to facilitate refugees. We have entire branches and bureaus of the State Department who do that. Now, they use embassy facilities and the embassy diplomatic status to facilitate these operations, but the embassy doesn't do this. By and large, there's very few people in the embassy who work there on a daily basis who will be involved in this program. The defense attachés are not involved. The legats, the legal attachés, are not involved. USAID doesn't exist anymore, but it wouldn't have been involved. Very few people in the embassy would be involved in this. Very few people. It would be people from USCIS and from PRM. That's who would be doing this, among others. So understand that. It's very difficult to get this point across. And I've been consistent in this from the very beginning. If you are outside the country, but your permanent abode is in South Africa, put in a statement of interest. When you're contacted and you're told to come in for an interview, make sure you're in South Africa. Fly back to South Africa or sail back to South Africa. Do your interview. Be honest. You can tell them you were temporarily out of the country, but you're here now for your interview. All right? That seems like common sense to me, but that seems lost on people. This gets very convoluted when people try to complain or moan or say that, well, this or that. Who cares who shot Johnny? The bottom line, as I've said from the very beginning, it's an in-country resettlement program. Therefore, in order to be considered for it, you cannot be a South African living in Namibia. You cannot be a South African living in Botswana or in Ireland or UK or the US. You have to be a South African living in South Africa. The embassy website, according to Professor G, was updated today, the 15th of October. That may very well be the case. However, they did not update the date. The date still says 8 September. And on that 8 September update, which apparently was updated today, two things pop up that were not there previously that are getting the attention of Professor G and will get the attention of a lot of South Africans. Number one, it says you must be 18 years old or are being referred with a parent as defined by the Immigration Nationality Act. Again, I've stated that from the very beginning. 16-year-olds can't apply for this program. If you're 18 or older, you must apply on your own. Put a statement of interest in. However, your parents should include you on that statement of interest if they want you to come over. It'll be up to the U.S. government whether they consider the nuclear family or not under the Nationality Act, Immigration Nationality Act. But the important one here that really matters is that you must be living inside South Africa. The program does not anticipate any out-of-country processing of South African nationals. And once again, for the same reason about like having dual nationality. If you have a safe haven or you're firmly resettled, firm resettlement, which was what Professor G talked about today, then there's no need for you to be a refugee. People keep acting as if this is your ticket to America. It's an immigration program. It's not immigration. Get that crap out of your head if you're interested in this. It's not immigration. We didn't just decide, let's let all the South Africans come to America. That's not what happened here. President Trump determined that racial minorities in South Africa were being unjustly persecuted because of their race. And he's correct. Therefore, he opened the door to racial minorities in South Africa who are being unjustly persecuted. Not to racial minorities from South Africa who are living in Frankfurt, living in Dublin, living in Edinburgh, living in Sydney. It's not for you unless you're there temporarily, my analysis, and you're going back to South Africa. That's a different story. But if you firmly resettled, which is different than temporary basis, you can't apply. This isn't an immigration program. Stop complaining about it, stop whining about it, and start paying attention. You chose to go to those places because whatever reason, an opportunity or South Africa was unlivable at the point you left. That was your prerogative. This program applies to the racial minorities living in South Africa who are being racially persecuted, which isn't everybody. Mr. Rupert's not being racially persecuted, so he wouldn't be able to get refugee status. Dan Corder apparently is not being racially persecuted, so he wouldn't be able to get status. Anyway, nothing has ever changed. This has always been the case. There was a dearth of information from the U.S. Embassy and the U.S. government when this program was announced on the U.S. Embassy website on the 10th of February. And from that date, I've consistently told you, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, September, now October, 9 months. Well, this is the 9th month now. I have told you consistently, it's in country. You must be in South Africa to apply for the program, and you must be a South African national. You can't be a Zimbabwean national living in South Africa and ask for it. You can't be a Namibian living there. It doesn't work. All right? And you must be a racial minority. That was the only thing from my analysis that was a little bit vague to me because Trump was talking about Afrikaners and there was conversation about farmers, and it clearly wasn't for farmers. It clearly wasn't for whites. It clearly wasn't for Afrikaners exclusively. I said I would hope on February 7th, after he announced it that evening, that it would extend to ethnic minorities. And by that, I meant racial minorities. And it did. You must be in South Africa. If you're on an H-2A visa, you're in a catch-22. I said that from the very beginning. And people have asked me, what's your advice? Well, I would not overstay my visa. That's a dumb move. Dumb move. When you overstay your visa, you risk deportation. When you're deported, coming back ain't going to happen. Unless it was a voluntary deportation and the period of 10 years is expired. But do you want to go back to South Africa and wait 10 years because you decided to listen to cockamamie advice to stay in America, despite the fact that you were told that you can only come back if you're in good stead. Folks, nothing new. But I appreciate Professor G putting a video up to clarify this. And for all the nonsense talkers, the charlatans, and all the people that have attacked me and made false allegations that I don't know what I'm talking about, remember, I made these analysis. I told people what my view, what my expectation was for this program with a dearth of information, no inside information from the government. And time and again, time and again, time and again, my analysis has been correct, 100%. It has been well in advance of the U.S. government telling people about these things, and it's been honest. So what are your questions? Thank you very much. God bless. And good luck to anyone who wants to be a refugee, come over to the U.S. Cheers.